Hello and welcome to the Scotland Rugby News Podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped, and him over there, editor extraordinaire, the one and only Gavin Harper. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very well, Bruce. How are you?
Yeah, good. Buzzing. Absolutely buzzing for this. So we're almost at the season kickoff. You must be getting excited for that.
I mean, can't wait. It's been it feels like it's been a long time since either Edinburgh or Glasgow played, but particularly Edinburgh. So it'll be good to be back at the Hive next weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And we spoke to Kyle Rowe, Glasgow, other end of the M8. So having a chat to somebody from Edinburgh, you got to go big. And I know you're not supposed to have favourites, but pretty confident to say this one's one of my favourites. I am buzzing for this. Top man. You ready for this, Gav?
Yeah, let's get him on, eh?
Let's bring him in. The one, the only, Mr. Ben Vellacott.
Hey guys, how you doing? You all good?
All good, Ben. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
Class. Absolutely delighted to have you. So it's been a while coming. How are you feeling? How are the squad feeling? First game, ready to go?
Yeah, we're honestly really excited. Like Gav just said, it's been a long time coming since we last played games. Obviously, we finished our season a lot earlier than we kind of hoped for, but it kind of gave us a well-earned rest, kind of time to reflect on how the season kind of went for us. And yeah, I know pre-season hasn't been as long as last year, but honestly, it's felt forever since we last played our last game.
And you must be buzzing to get back to the Hive. The players talk about it being an enjoyable place to be. Supporters are enjoying it. They must be. Season tickets are going well. Nice to start at home.
Yeah, I think any team wants to kind of start at home. Like that's the best way, the best possible solution for us. And I think as we kind of looked at last season and how the end of last season looked for us in terms of our fans, like especially against Munster at home, that place was epic. The crowd, the noise, it just made that night extra special. I know we came out on the losing side, but honestly, it was a real special night at the Hive.
Yeah, it was class. Do you, because you in particular, there are certain players that create that atmosphere by the way that they play. Darcy gets the ball, people get excited. Duran gets the ball, people get excited. When you're on the ball and, when the referee blows a whistle and gives a penalty to Edinburgh, I'm looking because you're looking, you're ready to go and we can get excited about that. Can you sense that or are you just playing the game?
I think in the moment I'm just playing the game, but I think when I was a little kid and I was watching and I was playing in the back garden and I was watching rugby on the TV or going to games, like I really looked at those players and thought, wow, like how exciting that could be. And I guess I try and be one of those players who tries to make rugby enjoyable to watch. Not saying that it's not, but at times it can be pretty down and gritty and stuff like that. So if there's ever a chance I can kind of bring the crowd alive or bring a bit of spark and fun to the game, then yeah, that's something I try and do.
Yeah, you definitely do that. You touched on last season, and you also mentioned finishing the season early. There's a lot of leaders in that group. I'm guessing, but you can enlighten us. I'm guessing there was a bit of a sort of internal reflection, and boys being pretty honest with things.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of you look at our group, you look at our squad, it's world class. And to kind of finish where we did and kind of leave ourselves to that final game against Benetton to kind of be in the top 8, that's not where we should be as a club. I guess like our own saving grace is that obviously it was our first season under a new head coach. And we were kind of putting the building blocks in place. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. But I think we've had a really good pre-season so far. We've obviously had a new attack coach join us, Scott Maffey, who's been absolutely excellent, and he's kind of he's a different coach to what we've got, and he's really brought a buzz around the place and to our rugby. So I think we're going in the right direction, and we're putting those building blocks in place for hopefully a good season.
Ben, one of the things I spoke to Gilcock a few weeks ago, and he was saying that while it was all kind of doom and gloom towards the end of the season, his message was you weren't actually a million miles away. does it feel like that from a player's point of view, or can you take that any solace from that, or does it still kind of wrangle as much as it did at the end of last year, the way it all finished?
Yeah, I think Gilly's he was right. Like, we weren't a million miles away, like a bonus point here, a bonus point there, and that was us in the top 8. And again, we had a long, hard look at ourselves, and yeah, we weren't good at times, but we were excellent in other areas. And so yeah, like, hopefully we've put those rights to put those things right, and hopefully we get those areas right in this coming season. As the URC isn't what it used to be, in terms of there was a big shift between the top half of the table and the bottom, whereas now any team can beat anyone. And that's what's so exciting about this league, is that you've got top quality players, top quality teams competing at the highest level.
Yeah, I love that you've mentioned your new attack coach. Not many of us know much about him, but all messages coming out are really positive, and I smiled when you said he's different from the coaches we got, because from what I can gather, he's a bundle of energy and really brought that to pre-season. How much are you looking forward to develop? You said building blocks. How much are you looking forward to developing the game plan this year?
Yeah, like, it's honestly really exciting. Obviously, like I said, with the squad we've got, the players you've already mentioned Duhan, Darcy, even the likes of when you got Wes Gooson on the ball, that brings the crowd to light. And if we can get the ball from the middle of the pitch out wide to those boys in space, they're going to cause a lot of damage. And obviously Scott's worked really hard to kind of, again, he hasn't been with us that long, so again, it's just going to take a little bit of time bedding. Like, we as an Edinburgh team have kind of been under a different attack coach for a wee bit, so it's kind of getting out of those habits and just really putting ourselves and challenge ourselves to the best we can.
One of the things I'm really interested to see, there's a lot of depth in this squad. In some positions, there's more than 2 players and lots of them with international caps in each position. What does that do to the intensity in training?
Honestly, I think so. We were pretty unlucky last season. We did have a lot of injuries, and that did hamper us a little bit. Whereas this year, I think the last couple of weeks, especially, we've had everybody back fit. And like you said, there's so much depth in each position, which is awesome, and it just makes training so much improved. And everybody's just biting at the bit to challenge one another, and that's only going to help us individually. If there wasn't that depth in the squad, then it's easy in one position just to get very complacent and kind of just go about your business. Whereas with the squad, with the depth that we've got and the challenging for each other's position, is only going to make each other better.
How does that work in your own position? What's the relationship with Ali like, and Charlie, I suppose, as well?
Yeah, I actually think that we've got a really, really good relationship. We've got a very good working relationship, and we actually all get on off the field very well. Obviously, we want to play rugby. That's why we're there, right? But at the same time, we know that we're in such a pivotal position that we need to keep challenging ourselves and challenging each other to make each other better, which is only going to be the best for the team. And we all bring our different attributes to the team and our different strengths. But we can learn from one another in terms of, obviously, Ali's very experienced international, played a lot of games for Glasgow as a British and Irish Lion. So it'd be silly for Charlie and myself not to be able to learn off them. And then obviously you've got the younger nines coming through, like Conor McAlpine, who's again is biting at the bit to try and push us, which is only meaning that we can't kind of rest on our laurels, because otherwise somebody's going to take your position. So it's honestly awesome. I love that competition, and it's only going to make us better.
I'm delighted you mentioned Conor McAlpine there. Kid had a pretty tough injury at an important point in his development. He's come back really strongly, played for the 20s. There's a lot of really exciting young players at Edinburgh. Do you enjoy, not necessarily a formal mentoring role, but do you enjoy working with those younger guys?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, like, I've been in that position myself, and I know at the time, like, if I look back, obviously I was at Gloucester at the time, and I had probably some of the best nines in the world, if not in the world, to learn off at the time. Obviously, Greg Laidlaw, Willie Hines, had Dan Robson there as well. all nines that when I was that young, I'll try and learn as much as I can of them. And I remember being in that position and they were helping me. So it's just right if I return the favor. So if I can help them in any way, shape or form, then like, I love that sort of side of it.
I love that you've mentioned the nines there, but some of the kids in that Edinburgh squad are absolute giants. McVie, McConnell,
I'm not
Curry.
exactly the tallest.
so there's some big lumps in there.
Yeah, those boys are man mountains. Obviously, I don't know what they feed kids these days, but honestly, those boys are absolute athletes. And again, they're really pushing the boys in the senior positions to kind of up their game because again, you can't rest on your laurels anymore.
No, I would bet, and there's some cracking players there. It's an exciting thing to see as you see the fixture list. It's if you could pick a tougher start for Edinburgh, it would be tough than what you've got. Have you got short-term targets? Is there a target for the first 4 games? Is there a target until November? How do you map out your season?
Yeah, obviously it's a tough old start, but at the same time, you have to face these teams at some stage, right? So it's probably best to get your tougher games out at the start. And like you said, it's a cliche, and I hate saying it, but we really do take one game at a time. And obviously, we've got a big first game coming up against Leinster, who are coming over to the Hive, and they're going to be chomping at the bit after a long pre-season. They went real well against Northampton a couple of weeks ago. So again, we can't really look past them, and we'll kind of assess each game as they come.
And the thought of the top 8, is that a goal that you've talked about? Is it top 4? Is there a longer term goal you're able to share with us?
Yeah, I think obviously it'd be silly for me not to say that we want to be in that top 8. Like the squad and the depth that Edinburgh have got, like we have to be up there. We'll be putting ourselves down if we weren't in that top 8. So yeah, we're going to be challenging for that right from the start, and hopefully we start well and we can build on that momentum as each game comes.
Ben, the fact that you've beaten some of the kind of top teams in the league, you've beaten Glasgow, you've beaten the Bulls, does that give you confidence going into these what is a really tough start that you can knock off the kind of the top teams in the league?
Yeah, of course. It does give you confidence, but at the same time, we have to be consistently good in every game. We can't just switch on one game here, one game there. Just because we're playing Glasgow, that's an extra bit of motivation. Like that has to be there every single game, and we have to go in with that belief that we're going to win every game. Because at the end of the day, we need to be competing at the top with the likes of Glasgow, the Bulls, etc., in order to be in the running for the silverware at the end of the season.
Glasgow have obviously found a way of building towards that end of the season and that playing almost their best rugby in those playoff games. Why do you think, like over a long period of years, not just your time, why have Edinburgh never managed to kind of put that run together to go into the latter stages of playoff games? And because on paper the squad's more than capable.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing sometimes can be down to injuries. The amount of injuries that you have can unfortunately really put you in struggling towards the end of the season. So if we can kind of keep as many of our starting 15 as possible fit, then great. You've got your best team going into the end of the season, but also just staying really refreshed into coming to the end of the season. Obviously, being really smart around time on the pitch during training and stuff like that, and which then means you're fresher for games. So again, like we've seen that Glasgow can do it, and they obviously have got a top quality squad. So if we can kind of compete with them and kind of believe that we can do it, then we'll be right there at the end.
There's always a turnover of staff. End of the season, people go. Start of the season, new people arrive. A couple of big names, Bill, WP, exit stage left, but then in come other players. Maggie's back, feels he's a new signing, but Matty Scott's back, but there's some new players in as well. You spoke about freshness during the season. Is it nice to, sad to see good guys go, but nice to bring some new people in?
Yeah, definitely. I think the new additions, I say new additions, obviously Maggie and Matty Scott have obviously been there before, but they've come back different players and they've obviously developed their games. Obviously, Maggie down at Bristol and obviously Matty Scott down at Gloucester, Leicester, etc. And they've come back and they've really rejuvenated the squad and they've really slotted back in and brought a real energy and kind of brought back to the club what they've learned being away. And then obviously like Sir Paul Hill, who's been an awesome addition. Obviously, he's got big shoes to fill in terms of VP, but his energy and the way he puts himself around the park has been excellent. And again, he's coming from a Premiership winning side as in Northampton. So those new additions have been excellent for the group. And then obviously you've got the calmness of Ross Thompson, who again is going to be really fighting for that number 10 shirt against Benny Healy and Cammy Scott. So again, that competition side has just been excellent for the squad, and that can only mean good things for the team.
Ben, given how much they both missed of last season, does having Boff and Darcy both fit feel like new signings? You know, they must feel like almost new signings.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, like we missed them a lot last year, and it'd be silly for me to say like you don't miss Darcy out on the pitch, because Darcy will create something out of nothing, and again he gives you those amazing moments that we see from him. And again, having him, Boff, back in the squad and around team training just gives a smile and energy around the place, which is awesome. And again, that's competition for places. Obviously, Goose was our player of the season last year, so Boff and him going at each other for the 15 shirt is again just going to be great for the team. And I'm excited. I'm glad I'm not the coach. Let's just say that in terms of who I'm picking.
Yeah, I hear you, because it's a tough one to pick. We've had you for a fair chunk of time, Ben, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you. But I am interested. You've become a more experienced, more mature player in the time you've been at Edinburgh. You're now a dad. How do all those things go into the mix to possibly make you a happier human? Does that contribute to the job that you do?
Yeah, I think, like you say, I came to Edinburgh. It was a few like my mid 20s, and I kind of probably fallen out of love with rugby a little bit. Like I had a pretty nasty ACL injury, and then COVID kind of hit, so like things kind of didn't really work my way at the time. And I kind of really fell back in love with rugby at Edinburgh. Obviously, the style of rugby we were playing, the players that were at the club, who obviously become my best friends, and obviously now started my own little family here. So we can truly call Edinburgh home. But yeah, obviously, kind of had to grow up a little bit. Obviously, I still think I'm a 20-year-old.
Hey, amen, brother. Amen, brother. I hear you.
I was having this conversation with Matt Banahan the other day in terms of he obviously retired about 6 years ago now, and Banners and I go way back at Gloucester, and he said he still feels that same 20-year-old running around, even though he's in the late 30s body. And so I still try and keep myself young. Obviously, being a dad now is awesome. I can't believe my little man's 1 at the end of this month. Like that year's like absolutely flown by. So it's pretty cool to kind of be able to call myself a dad, and it kind of takes myself away from rugby when I get home. Like as soon as I'm home from rugby, I'm into full dad mode. Whereas that probably wasn't the case when we didn't have the little one. I was probably coming home and I was sticking rugby on the TV, or I was watching training straight away, whereas things have to take a little bit, put on the back burner. And I think it's really good for me, because I was probably immersing myself in rugby so much that it was probably coming a little bit of a chore at times before coming to Edinburgh and stuff. So kind of getting away from that has kind of really helped. And obviously getting married in the summer as well. Again, it's kind of all these things kind of growing up. We had a fantastic wedding, we had lovely weather, and had a wife at the end of it, which was awesome. She said yes. That was the main thing.
She said yeah. I love it. It's brilliant. It's great to hear you do that. And with you and Matt Banahan, is there a club Halloween sort of fancy dress party?
I don't know why you're asking that.
Can you and Matt Banahan go as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito for twins in white matching suits? I reckon now, because he is an absolute giant. When he brings the kicking tee on for Scotland women, he makes Helen Nelson look like a Subutio figure. It is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I've still got the photo saved on my phone of his first pre-season at the club, and somebody took it from behind, and well, I just look like a little kid. Let's just say that.
Well, he's back, got the mascot with him.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what was going around the whole pre-season.
Class. Benny, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I love it. I love watching you play. You light up the Hive. All the best for the season. You've got a huge back in there. The fans are coming back, desperate for rugby to come back. So it's great to hear the positivity you're talking about. All the best from all of us. We hope you have a cracking season.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Great stuff.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Ben.
I love that guy.
Yeah, brilliant. And you said it, I think, pretty much right at the start. Like, he's one of those kind of X factor players that like get his hands on the ball as much as possible, and he makes things happen, and yeah, I think I had a quick look while we were just before we came on air that I think he started about 50% of the games that he played last year. So I think if you can up that number a wee bit, but it's a really interesting dynamic that between him and Ali Price, who kind of play in what games and who's asked to kind of do that role off the bench. So yeah, it's it'll be a really interesting season for Ben, for Edinburgh.
Yeah, I think the other bit to that, and we spoke about this with Scotland women, is the combinations. You've now got, Cammy Scott he's not that young anymore, but he's probably still the junior member. But you've got Ben Healy, who played everything last year. Then Ross Thompson comes, he's wanting game time. You've got Cammy Scott, who's still there. So now you've got 3 10s really battling and scrapping. You've got 2 9s. I'm interested to see the matchups there. Does Ali go well with him, and does Ben go well with him? Or so that, even that I can't pick. And the coaches might not know yet. They're going to have to see.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And I think it'll probably take a few weeks into the season before Sean Everett knows, okay, Ben works best with Ross or with Ben Healy, or what his best combination is, who's best suited to coming off the bench, and all that kind of stuff will take a bit of time, because pre-season's great for loads of things, but there's nothing like actually playing games. So yeah, it's interesting. I think Ross's move from Glasgow will help Ben Healy, because I think ultimately Edinburgh need to take some of that workload off him. Like, you can't play just about every minute of every game and expect to still hit.
Ben Healy wants to, though. Ben Healy wants to.
But let's be honest. Every player wants to play every minute of every game, but I'm just not sure that in 2 competitions against the teams Edinburgh are playing and competing with, that you can ask somebody in such a pivotal position. And then there was the issue of, Cammy Scott's not a youngster, but he's still pretty green in terms of that top level experience. And I think that having Ross Thompson just gives Edinburgh that buffer of, they now have another senior 10 in the squad who can step in.
I love how Ben mentioned so many different players. There's obviously an excitement there, and also that depth that we spoke about right at the beginning. You could probably pick almost 2 15s, and or you could pick one and I could pick one, and there would be a lot of arguments over who we're picking, because the depth's there. I think he said it's a world-class squad. So now world-class squad has to kind of translate to performance.
And I think that's it. That's kind of the point I made with the question about why have Edinburgh never won anything, really, is on paper, Edinburgh have always had a really strong squad. You look at, the back row for the last 7 of 8 years, Richie Watson, Mata, and for this season, probably Richie Watson, Bradbury, stacks up with just about, most of the back rows in the in the competition. Look at the back three, Boffelli, Darcy, Duhan is, and that's without Wes Houston, Harry Patterson. Like they've got an unbelievable squad on paper, but they need to translate that into results on the pitch. And I think that level of consistency, I think we've talked about this for like a long time about the Scotland men's team. The difference between their best and their worst is often too great and happens too many times in a season. I think Edinburgh, that also applies. So I think if Sean Everett can narrow the gap between their best and their worst and make them a more consistent team, then they're on, they should be on the kind of right track. But as Ben said there, I don't think that the whole thing's broken because they weren't a million miles away last season. A few bonus points where in games they scored 3 tries instead of 4, and they would have been in those playoffs.
Yeah, I do think, though, when we spoke to Brian Eason last week and he was on about, pre-season, everybody's happy, everybody's had the best pre-season, everybody's fit. The other squads, like if we were to pick up the Leinster squad now, you'd be going, that's really strong. If you pick up the Sharks and the Bulls and the Benetton, the Glasgow squad, Munster, you're looking at really strong squads. Like on paper, your top teams are international class, and even the bottom of the URC now, probably Welsh, maybe. They're not that strong, but they're still decent. It's not like you can really play your second team, and like you're saying, closing that gap. It's almost you've got to pick your strongest 15 every week, and that's likely a good thing for Ben Healy that Ross Thompson's there because that's a tough shift.
Yeah, and I think it means that when you look at swapping guys out, you've got like Edinburgh could now swap out Ewan Ashman, Dave Cherry, both Scotland internationals. Ross Thompson, Ben Healy again. Ali and Ben at scrum half. The back three we've talked about, back row. There's loads of competition. Whereas probably in the past, Edinburgh's team and 23 looks great, but beyond that, their depth is struggles a wee bit when it's tested against some of the top teams. So I guess the balance is going to be how Sean Everett manages the squad. I suppose in the way that Franco did last year with Glasgow, in that he got the best out of Ewan Ferry, Max Williamson, who you wouldn't have necessarily expected this time 12 months ago to be anywhere near a squad for the final. But,
I think maybe one of the benefits, though, is they were called on for games rather than till the end of the season.
Yeah, and that's it, exactly. You're
to be able to put for a couple of games because, but they were in the middle of an experienced combination, or they were, there was, I think especially in the back three for Edinburgh, Matt Curry had to play in the wing last year. I think Benzo played in the wing. Christine came on at one point, but that then necessitated about 2 other moves in the back line. That's tough, and kind out with your control. I think there's a few boys you mentioned, Boff and Darcy being like new signings. Like it's time for Ben Muncaster. It's time for Connor Boyle. It's time because they're going to have to play rugby this year. Yeah,
I mean 100%. I think there's a piece on the Scotland Rugby News site with Ben from earlier in the week where he says basically this is put up or shut up. I think he's out of contract this time next year, at the end of this season. So really, a lot of his future might be determined on the this season. I think he's now the only one of the players who were uncapped and went on that Scotland tour a couple of years ago to Chile, who's still uncapped. So that I don't imagine that's a great feeling from a sort of personal point of view. And he's had loads of injuries, so yeah, while the competition's great from his own personal point of view, he'll want to force himself in that team and play as much rugby as he can.
Yeah, great kid. Although he's not much of a kid anymore, but great guy. Listen, there's lots, I think, to look forward to. Big chap. I'll see you at the Hive. Looking forward to it. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see what happens. Last year there was a lot of kind of stuttering and nearlies and maybes. I think it's time to go. If they're going to go, they need to go on with it.
And what a way to start. You know, if you want a barometer of where you're at, then go and play Leinster and go and have a couple of games in South Africa, come back and play the Stormers. I mean, you said it there. You know, if you were picking a start, you certainly wouldn't pick that. But, you know, and Ben touched on it, that they'll know where they're at.
He also said you've got to play them sometime, and that's also true. But you feel like if you beat Leinster first game of the season, all of a sudden you're flying. Like, how good is life? You lose to Leinster, then you've got to sit on a plane and go to South Africa and play 2 games and say all of a sudden things didn't feel quite as great. Like, you know, we've both played and coached, and what the distance between the final whistle on a Saturday when you've lost to even just the first training session to try and get back on the horse feels like ever. Whereas when you win, you're like, come on. Like, I'm ready to train. Like, let's go again. Too many days between Saturdays.
There's that football adage that it's like a relegation 6-pointer, but, you know, for a first game of the season, it's almost ridiculous to say that, but like, that game could make or break the first 5 or 6 weeks of Edinburgh's season, and then who knows what happens thereafter. So yeah, look, it's a tough start, but if they get off to, you know, traditionally, whether it's been with internationals missing or just a slightly slower start, I think you maybe wouldn't mind playing Leinster first up. So yeah, let's wait and see. But it's exciting times certainly, and it'll be interesting to see how all the new boys got on as well.
Yeah, class. Great to chat again, big man. Join Scotland Rugby News, £12 for 12 months. You can't sniff at that, especially with all the in-depth journalism that Gav and his team are putting together, and sometimes there's even a scribble from me. He was Gavin Harper, the man at the top from Scotland Rugby News. I was Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Eggshade. Great to speak to you. We will be back again very, very soon. But in the meantime, look after yourself and enjoy your rugby. Bye.